From the book, Understanding the Dismissive Avoidant Attachment Style by Mindy Rivers. The Hidden Inner Dialogue. This section is about the hidden inner dialogue of a dismissive avoidant person, the private conversation that often runs beneath the calm surface. Many dismissive avoidant people look certain on the outside. They may seem confident, self-possessed, and unbothered. Partners often assume that what they see is what is happening inside. The truth is that many dismissive avoidants carry a lot of inner activity that they do not share, sometimes because they do not know how, and sometimes because it feels unsafe. Understanding this inner dialogue matters because it can help you see that avoidant behavior is often not indifference. It is often an internal negotiation between longing, fear, pride, and the need to stay in control. The hidden inner dialogue often begins with a habit of self-containment. If you grew up in a home where feelings were not welcomed, you learned early to keep your emotional life private. You learned to make decisions inside yourself. You learned to calm yourself down alone. This created an inner voice that handles everything privately, and that voice can become the main companion in adulthood. When conflict arises or closeness intensifies, the avoidant person often turns inward rather than outward. They process alone, and the processing can be intense even when they appear quiet. One common situation looks like this. A partner says something that hurts the avoidant person, and the avoidant person goes silent. The partner thinks the avoidant person does not care. Inside, the avoidant person may be having a full conversation. They might be thinking about what the comment means. They might be deciding whether it is safe to respond. They might be telling themselves not to overreact. They might be fighting the urge to withdraw. They might also be replaying old memories of being criticized or dismissed. The silence is not always emptiness. It is often crowded. The inner dialogue of a dismissive, avoidant person often includes minimizing as a coping tool. The voice might say, "It is not a big deal even when something feels painful." The voice might say, "You do not need that," when the person feels longing. The voice might say, "Just handle it," when the person feels overwhelmed. This inner voice is often trying to keep the person safe by keeping need out of awareness. It is the voice that learned long ago that needing leads to disappointment. The voice is protective, and it can also be harsh. Another feature of the inner dialogue is constant evaluation of closeness. A dismissive, avoidant person often monitors how close the relationship feels. They might not say it, but they notice how often they are expected to text, how many evenings are spent together, and how much emotional conversation is happening. When the relationship feels too close, the inner dialogue may become alarmed. It might say, "This is getting too much," or "I am losing my freedom," or "They want too much from me." These thoughts may show up as certainty. They may feel like the truth. Often they are the mind trying to restore safety by creating distance. One common situation looks like this after a tender moment. The avoidant person feels close and then later feels unsettled. The inner dialogue begins. It might say, "Do not get too attached." It might say, "You are going to regret this." It might say, "They are going to need more now." It might say, "You cannot keep this up." The person might then pull away, not because they stopped caring, but because the inner dialogue is warning them of danger. The danger might be emotional dependence, obligation, or exposure. Distance quiets the warning voice. The inner dialogue also often includes fear that is disguised as judgment. A dismissive, avoidant person may suddenly focus on their partner's flaws. They may think about how the partner is too emotional, too messy, or too demanding. These judgments can feel like clarity. They can also be a way of creating distance internally. If you convince yourself the partner is not right, you do not have to face the vulnerability of loving them. This is one of the ways the mind protects the heart. It turns fear into critique, because critique feels safer than longing. The inner dialogue of a dismissive, avoidant person can also include guilt, even when it is hidden. Many avoidant people know they have limits in intimacy. They may sense their partner's disappointment. They may feel guilty for not being more open. They may also feel resentful of being asked, which creates a painful emotional mix. The inner voice may say, "You are failing," and then, "They should not expect this from you." The person may not share this with their partner because it feels vulnerable and confusing. They may instead withdraw, which reduces guilt in the moment but increases disconnection in the relationship. One common situation looks like this during conflict. The partner says they need something emotionally. The avoidant person feels pressure. Inside, they might think, I cannot do this, and I do not want to hurt them. And why is this so hard for me? And I should not have to do this. The partner hears silence. The avoidant person is experiencing a storm of thoughts. The partner interprets the silence as dismissal. The avoidant person experiences the silence as trying not to make things worse. The hidden inner dialogue is one reason avoidant people can seem unresponsive. They are responding internally, but they are not speaking. The inner dialogue often revolves around control because control has been a primary safety strategy. The voice might say, stay calm, or do not show weakness, or do not let them see you need them. Control can feel like dignity. It can also feel like survival. If you grew up feeling shamed for emotion, you may have learned that showing emotion leads to humiliation. The inner dialogue then becomes a guard that prevents exposure. The guard can be so strong that it blocks even healthy vulnerability. The inner dialogue can also include a longing that the person does not acknowledge. Dismissive avoidants often want to be loved in a steady way, and they often want to be understood without being pressured. They may crave a feeling of home in a relationship. They may imagine what it would be like to relax into closeness. Then the inner voice interrupts. It warns that closeness is dangerous. It reminds them that needing is risky. The person may then push the longing down. The longing becomes quiet, but it does not disappear. It shows up as restlessness, as loneliness, or as a sense that something is missing. One common situation looks like this when the avoidant person is alone at night. During the day, they may feel fine. At night, when distractions are gone, they may feel a sudden ache. They might think about their partner. They might miss them. They might want to reach out. Then the inner dialogue begins again. It might say, do not be needy, or you do not need anyone, or this is silly. The person may then pick up their phone and put it down, torn between longing and pride. This is the quiet inner struggle many avoidant people never talk about. Understanding the hidden inner dialogue is helpful because it shows that avoidance is often not a lack of feeling. It is a way of managing feeling. The avoidant person's mind is often working. Hard to keep them safe. The mind is trying to prevent shame, overwhelm, and dependency. The problem is that the same inner dialogue that protects can also isolate. It can keep love at a distance. It can turn relationships into a place of tension rather than comfort. Healing often involves learning to make the inner dialogue less harsh and more honest. Instead of a voice that says, you do not need anyone, you can develop a voice that says, you are feeling afraid of needing. And that makes sense. Instead of a voice that says, this is too much, you can develop a voice that says, you feel overwhelmed, and you can take space without disappearing. This shift does not happen overnight. It happens through practice and through gentle self-awareness. The goal is not to silence the inner dialogue. The goal is to make it kinder and more accurate. One common situation looks like this in growth. The avoidant person notices the urge to criticize their partner after a tender moment. Instead of obeying the critique, they pause and recognize it as a signal of fear. They remind themselves that closeness can feel scary because it is important. They choose to communicate their need for space in a respectful way instead of withdrawing. This is how the hidden inner dialogue can be used as information rather than as a command. The hidden inner dialogue is a private world that often goes unseen by partners and sometimes even by the avoidant person themselves. Bringing it into awareness can be healing because it reduces confusion. It helps you see that your behavior has reasons. It also gives you a place to intervene. When you can hear the inner voice, you can decide whether it is protecting you from real danger or from old learning that no longer fits. Over time, this awareness can soften the defenses that keep you distant. You can still be independent, still be dignified, and still allow love to reach you. The journey begins inside, with the quiet honesty of noticing what you have been telling yourself all along. Fear of rejection masked as indifference. This section is about fear of rejection that is masked as indifference, a pattern that is common in dismissive avoidant attachment and often deeply misunderstood. Many dismissive avoidant people truly appear indifferent. They may seem as if they do not care, as if nothing touches them, as if they could take or leave a relationship. Partners can feel devastated by this. They may believe the avoidant person's calm is proof that the relationship does not matter. The hidden truth is that indifference is often not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of fear, covered up by a stance that protects dignity. Fear of rejection is one of the most tender fears a person can carry. Rejection does not just mean someone leaving, it also means being met with contempt, being misunderstood, or being judged when you are vulnerable. For many dismissive avoidants, this fear formed early. They may have experienced emotional dismissal, criticism, or the sense that their needs were inconvenient. They learned that showing emotion was risky. They learned that reaching out could lead to pain. When you have that history, it makes sense to protect yourself by not reaching. Indifference is a powerful protection because it prevents you from needing. If you do not need anyone, you cannot be rejected in the same way. If you act as if you do not care, you do not have to face the risk of caring and being hurt. This is not always conscious. A dismissive avoidant person may genuinely feel indifferent in the moment because they have trained themselves to shut down feelings quickly. They may not recognize the fear underneath. They may only feel calm, detached, and certain that they are fine. The fear is still there, but it is hidden. One common situation looks like this. A dismissive avoidant person starts to care deeply about someone. They feel warmth, tenderness, and the desire to be close. Then they notice the risk. The risk is that the person could reject them. Instead of admitting that risk, they pull back. They act casual, they delay responses, they minimize the relationship. They might even talk about the other person's flaws. These behaviors can look like disinterest. Underneath, they are often self-protection. The avoidant person is trying to reduce the sting of potential rejection by lowering their own emotional investment. Indifference can also show up when a partner asks for reassurance. The partner might say, "Do you still love me?" And the avoidant person might respond with irritation or a shrug. The partner feels rejected and unsafe. The avoidant person may feel pressured. Underneath, the avoidant person might fear that if they offer reassurance, the partner will want more. They might fear that reassurance will create expectation. They might also fear that if they say loving words, they will be responsible for maintaining that emotional closeness. If closeness is linked to fear of losing autonomy, the avoidant person may respond with indifference to create distance. The indifference protects them from the vulnerability of saying, "Yes, I care." Fear of rejection is also masked as indifference when the avoidant person believes they must not be seen wanting. Wanting is exposure. Wanting implies that the other person matters. If the other person matters, their rejection would hurt. Many dismissive avoidants learned early that it is safer not to show wanting. They may have been shamed for needing. They may have been taught that strength means not caring. They may have admired people who were stoic. Over time, they adopted indifference as a form of strength. The problem is that indifference is not strength. It is armor. One common situation looks like this in dating. The avoidant person likes someone and feels excited, but they act cool. They may not initiate often. They may not express affection. They may wait for the other person to show interest first. If the other person pulls back, the avoidant person might tell themselves they never cared. They might say it was not serious. They might move on quickly. Underneath, the avoidant person may be protecting themselves from the pain of feeling rejected. By acting indifferent, they can tell themselves rejection does not matter, even if it does. Indifference can also hide fear of rejection in long-term relationships. Many dismissive avoidants fear that if their partner truly sees them, their partner will be disappointed. They may fear being seen as emotionally inadequate. They may fear being seen as weak. They may fear that their partner's love is conditional. If they grew up with criticism, they may carry an inner belief that they are never quite enough. When a partner asks for more emotional closeness, it can activate this fear. The avoidant person may respond with indifference, acting as if the request is silly or unnecessary. The indifference protects against the fear that they cannot meet the need and will be rejected for it. This often shows up during conflict. A partner expresses hurt, and the avoidant person responds with calm detachment. They might argue about facts. They might minimize the emotion. They might act as if they do not care. A partner becomes more upset. The avoidant person withdraws. Underneath, the avoidant person may fear that the conflict means the relationship is in danger. They may fear being blamed and rejected. Indifference keeps them from feeling that. Fear. It also keeps them from engaging in repair, which then increases the relationship danger. The armor protects in the moment and harms in the long run. Fear of rejection masked as indifference can also affect the avoidant person's ability to ask for what they need. They may not ask for closeness. They may not ask for reassurance. They may not ask for affection. They may act as if they do not care, even when they do. Partners may then assume the avoidant person is satisfied with distance. The avoidant person may then feel quietly lonely. They may feel that their partner does not offer enough warmth, but they have not communicated their need. They may then withdraw further. The relationship becomes colder, and both people feel alone. One common situation looks like this. The avoidant person wants their partner to reach out, but they do not want to ask because asking feels vulnerable. They act indifferent. The partner interprets the indifference as a desire for space and reaches out less. The avoidant person then feels rejected, but they do not name it. Instead, they become more distant. The cycle continues. Indifference, meant to protect against rejection, ends up creating the very distance that feels like rejection. Healing begins with recognizing indifference as a protective stance rather than as truth. This can be uncomfortable because dismissive avoidants often pride themselves on being rational and unaffected. Admitting fear can feel like weakness. Still, fear is not weakness. Fear is information. It tells you something matters. When you can name fear softly, even to yourself, you can stop needing indifference as a shield. You can begin to choose connection in small ways that feel safe. One common situation looks like this in growth. The avoidant person feels the urge to act indifferent when their partner asks for reassurance. Instead of shrugging, they say, "I get uncomfortable with these conversations, but I care about you." This sentence is simple. It does not require a long emotional discussion. It also prevents the partner from feeling rejected. It allows the avoidant person to keep dignity while being honest. Over time, this kind of honesty builds trust, and trust reduces fear of rejection. It also helps to understand that rejection is not the only risk in vulnerability. The avoidant person may fear being judged, misunderstood, or controlled. Those are all forms of rejection. When you can see what kind of rejection you fear, you can address it directly. You can set boundaries. You can ask for gentleness. You can choose relationships where your vulnerability is respected. You can also practice being vulnerable in small ways and noticing that you survive it. Fear of rejection masked as indifference is a heartbreaking pattern because it hides the heart behind a wall. The person appears unbothered while carrying longing and fear inside. Partners often take the indifference personally and feel unloved. The avoidant person often feels safer and also more alone. Understanding the pattern is a step toward changing it. When you can admit to yourself that you care, you can begin to show care in ways that feel respectful to your nervous system. You can learn that being attached does not make you weak. It makes you human. And when you allow your humanity to be seen, you give your relationships a chance to become warmer, steadier, and more real. The need to stay in control. This section is about the need to stay in control and why control can feel like the most reliable form of safety for a dismissive avoidant person. Control is not only about being bossy or dominating. For many avoidant people, control is internal. It is the way they manage their emotions, their needs, their image, and their exposure. It is the feeling of being able to handle life without depending too much on anyone else. When control is strong, intimacy can feel risky because intimacy invites unpredictability. It invites another person into your inner world, and another person can change the emotional temperature in ways you cannot fully manage. Understanding the need for control helps explain why avoidant people can seem calm and distant at the same time. Control becomes important when early life taught you that being out of control leads to pain. If you grew up in a home where emotions were met with criticism or dismissal, you may have learned that showing feeling invites judgment. If you grew up in a home where conflict escalated, you may have learned that emotional intensity is dangerous. If you grew up in a home where caregivers were unpredictable, you may have learned that relying on others is risky. In each case, control becomes a way to reduce vulnerability. The child learns, if I stay composed, I stay safe. This control often begins as emotional self-control. The child learns to stop crying quickly. They learn to swallow fear. They learn not to ask for comfort. They learn to keep their feelings contained. Adults may praise them for being mature. The child may feel proud of being strong. The control works. It reduces conflict and reduces disappointment. Over time, the child becomes an adult who does not know how to be emotionally messy in front of someone else. The adult may feel that being messy is dangerous or humiliating. Control becomes the default. One common situation looks like this. A partner starts a serious conversation and asks for emotional honesty. The dismissive avoidant person feels pressure. They may feel their body tense. They may feel the urge to end the conversation quickly. They might respond with logic, focusing on facts. They might change the subject. They might leave the room. From the outside, this can look like avoidance. Inside, it is often the need for control. The avoidant person is trying to keep the emotional intensity at a level they can manage. They fear that if the conversation continues, they will say something revealing, or they will be pulled into feelings they cannot control. Control also shows up in the need to manage distance. Many dismissive avoidants feel safest when they can decide when closeness happens. They may enjoy affection when they initiate it. They may feel overwhelmed when a partner initiates emotional closeness. This is not necessarily selfishness. It is a way of managing vulnerability. If you choose closeness, you feel in control. If closeness is requested from you, you may feel trapped. The difference is subtle but powerful. When you feel trapped, your defenses rise. The need for control can also lead to a strong preference for independence. Independence is not only a value. It is a way of staying in charge of your own emotional life. If you rely on yourself, you do not have to wait for someone else to show up. You do not have to risk disappointment. You do not have to feel the uncertainty of depending on another person. Independence reduces risk, and risk is what control is trying to avoid. The cost is that independence can become isolation, especially when you do not allow yourself to receive comfort. One common situation looks like this in daily life. The avoidant person is stressed, and instead of sharing, they handle it alone. Their partner may offer support. The avoidant person may say, "They are fine." They might not want the support. They might feel irritated by it. Underneath, support can feel like losing control. If you accept support, you are admitting you need it. You are also allowing someone else into your emotional space. That can feel exposing. Saying no restores control, even if it also keeps you alone. Control also shows up in the fear of being emotionally influenced. Many dismissive avoidants dislike feeling emotionally pulled. They may feel uncomfortable when a partner's mood affects them. They may feel irritated when their partner is sad, not because they do not care, but because sadness in the room changes their inner state. The avoidant person might want to return to calm quickly. They might try to fix the problem or minimize it. They may withdraw to restore their own emotional equilibrium. The need for control is partly the need to keep the inner world stable. This is why dismissive avoidants can struggle with empathic presence. Empathic presence requires allowing your heart to be touched by someone else's emotion. It requires being moved. Being moved can feel like losing control. If your identity is built around steadiness, being moved can feel risky. You might worry that if you let yourself feel, you will be overwhelmed. So you protect yourself by staying detached. The partner may experience this as coldness. The avoidant person experiences it as survival. Control also connects to fear of humiliation. Vulnerability often involves not knowing exactly how you will be received. That uncertainty can feel unbearable if you carry a strong shame response. Control reduces uncertainty. If you keep your feelings private, you do not have to risk being judged. If you keep your needs small, you do not have to risk being dismissed. If you keep your distance, you do not have to risk being rejected after being truly seen. Control becomes the way you protect dignity. One common situation looks like this. The avoidant person wants to say something loving, but hesitates. They fear that the words will not be returned, or that the words will create expectation. They fear looking foolish. They stay quiet. The partner might interpret the quiet as lack of love. The avoidant person might feel safer. Underneath, control is choosing safety over connection. The person is managing exposure. They are preventing the risk of humiliation. The cost is that love remains unspoken. The need for control can also lead to rigidity. If you are always trying to stay in charge, you may have trouble adapting to the normal unpredictability of relationships. Partners have needs. Life changes plans. Emotions rise unexpectedly. If you respond to unpredictability by tightening control, relationships can feel tense. The avoidant person may become more withdrawn. They may become more critical. They may become more focused on boundaries. Boundaries are healthy, but rigid boundaries can become walls. Control can turn boundaries into walls when fear is driving it. Healing does not require giving up control completely. Some level of control is part of healthy adulthood. The goal is to shift from control as defense to control as choice. Control as defense says, I must stay guarded or I will be hurt. Control as choice says, I can take care of myself and also allow closeness. The shift happens when you learn that intimacy can include boundaries. You can open up and still have limits. You can be vulnerable and still protect your autonomy. You can receive support and still be in charge of your life. One common situation looks like this in growth. A dismissive avoidant person feels overwhelmed in a conversation and says, I want to keep talking, but I need a pause to gather myself. This is control, but it is healthy control. It is not withdrawal. It is self-regulation. It also honors the relationship by promising return. Over time, practicing this kind of control makes intimacy safer. The person learns they do not have to shut down or disappear. They can stay engaged while still protecting themselves. Another part of healing is learning to trust that being influenced is not the same as being controlled. In close relationships, you will be affected by each other. That is part of love. The avoidant person can learn to tolerate being touched emotionally without feeling trapped. They can learn that empathy does not require losing themselves. It requires presence. Presence can be chosen. It can be entered and exited with care. When you learn this, control becomes less urgent. The need to stay in control is often a sign that vulnerability once felt unsafe. Control was the tool that helped you survive and maintain dignity. It can also become the barrier that keeps you from the closeness you crave. Understanding this need with compassion is the first step. From there, you can begin to practice a new kind of control, one that supports connection rather than blocking it. You can be steady and still be tender. You can be independent and still be close. You can remain yourself and still allow love to reach you. That is not a loss of control. It is a deeper form of freedom, the belief that feelings equal weakness. This section is about the belief that feelings equal weakness and why that belief can be so powerful in dismissive avoidant attachment. Many dismissive avoidant people do not walk around thinking, feelings are weak. The belief is often quieter than that. It shows up as discomfort with tears, impatience with emotional conversations, or a quick urge to solve problems instead of sitting with them. It shows up as pride in being calm and self-sufficient, and as shame when you need comfort. The belief is not always spoken, but it shapes behavior. When you believe feelings are weakness, you protect yourself by keeping feelings out of sight, even from yourself. This belief often begins in families that value toughness. In those homes, emotional expression may have been discouraged. Crying may have been mocked. Fear may have been dismissed. Needing comfort may have been treated as inconvenient. A child in that environment learns to associate emotional expression with humiliation. The child learns that being strong is the path to approval and belonging. Over time, the child learns to judge their own vulnerability. They learn to feel embarrassed when emotions rise. This is how feelings become linked to weakness. The belief can also form in homes where caregivers were overwhelmed. A child may have sensed that the adults did not have space for feelings. The child may have seen that emotional needs created stress in the caregiver. The child then learns to minimize needs, not only to be good, but to protect the caregiver. The child becomes the one who does not need much. That child grows up and still carries the rule that emotions are burdensome. If emotions are burdensome, showing them feels like being weak and selfish. So the person hides them. One common situation looks like this. A child cries and the caregiver responds with irritation. The child feels shame. The child learns to stop crying quickly. The next time the child feels upset, they swallow it before it shows. Over time, the child becomes skilled at emotional control. People praise them for being mature. The child learns that maturity means not showing emotion. As an adult, the person may feel pride in their steadiness. They may also feel discomfort when their partner cries because crying activates the old shame association. The partner's feelings feel like weakness, and the avoidant person may fear being pulled into weakness. This belief affects how dismissive avoidants relate to their own inner life. If you believe feelings equal weakness, you will try not to feel. You will distract yourself. You will focus on tasks. You will stay busy. You will use logic as a shield. This can create a life that looks productive and successful. It can also create a life that feels emotionally thin. You may not know what you want. You may not know what you need. You may not know what brings you joy. Feelings carry information. When you reject feelings, you reject information about yourself. The belief also affects how dismissive avoidants respond to other people's emotions. When a partner expresses sadness or fear, the avoidant person may feel impatient. They may think the partner should be able to handle it. They may feel that the partner is creating drama. This response can be hurtful. Underneath, it is often fear. The avoidant person fears emotion because emotion has been linked to shame. They may also fear that emotions will create demands. If feelings equal weakness, then being around feelings can feel like being around something contagious. They may fear they will be pulled into it. They pull away to protect themselves. One common situation looks like this in a relationship. A partner says they are feeling insecure and wants reassurance. The dismissive avoidant person responds with logic, telling them they have no reason to feel that way. The partner feels invalidated and becomes more emotional. The avoidant person feels more overwhelmed and withdraws. The partner feels abandoned. Underneath, the avoidant person may believe insecurity is weakness. They may also fear that if they respond emotionally, they will be pulled into endless reassurance. They choose distance because distance preserves the identity of strength. The belief that feelings equal weakness can also make it hard to apologize. Apology requires humility and emotional openness. It requires admitting you hurt someone. If you believe feelings are weakness, admitting hurt can feel humiliating. It can feel like surrender. The avoidant person may prefer to move on without repair. They may act as if nothing happened. They may focus on facts. They may argue. These moves protect against vulnerability. The cost is that the relationship does not heal. The partner carries the hurt alone. Over time, this creates distance. Another impact is the way the avoidant person experiences their own dependency needs. Even the most independent person has moments of needing comfort. Illness, grief, disappointment, and exhaustion are part of life. If you believe needing comfort is weakness, you may refuse comfort even when you need it. You may isolate when you are hurting. You may keep your pain private. People around you may not know you are struggling. You may feel proud of handling it. You may also feel lonely. The belief forces you to carry life alone. One common situation looks like this. The avoidant person goes through a loss and continues working as usual. Friends and family may say they are strong. The avoidant person may feel relieved not to be seen as needy. Later, they may feel numb, restless, or disconnected. The grief has not been processed. The belief that feelings are weakness has prevented grieving. Over time, unprocessed emotion can show up as irritability, exhaustion, or distance in relationships. The avoidant person may not connect these symptoms to grief, because grief feels like weakness and is therefore denied. Healing the belief begins with redefining strength. Strength is not the absence of feeling. Strength is the ability to stay present with what is true without being destroyed by it. Strength includes asking for help when you need it. Strength includes allowing someone to comfort you. Strength includes admitting fear and still moving forward. When you change the definition of strength, feelings stop being the enemy. They become part of being human. This shift often requires gentle exposure to safe emotional experiences. A dismissive, avoidant person may need to experience that tears can be met with kindness, not mockery. They may need to experience that vulnerability can be respected, not exploited. They may need to experience that emotional conversations can end calmly, not escalate endlessly. These experiences teach the body a new lesson. They show that feelings do not have to lead to shame. They can lead to connection. One common situation looks like this in growth. A dismissive, avoidant person feels the urge to hide sadness and instead shares a simple truth, such as, "I've been having a hard time." The partner responds with warmth. Nothing terrible happens. The avoidant person feels uncomfortable and also relieved. This is the beginning of changing the belief. Each time you allow a feeling to be seen and you survive it, the association between feelings and weakness becomes weaker. You build a new association between feelings and safety. It also helps to recognize that emotions are not the opposite of reason. Emotions and reason work together. Emotions tell you what matters. Reason helps you decide what to do about it. When you reject emotions, you are not becoming more rational. You are becoming less informed. Many dismissive avoidant people are highly intelligent, and they can use intelligence to avoid feeling. Intelligence is a gift, and it can also become a shield. Learning to include feelings does not reduce intelligence. It adds depth and wisdom. The belief that feelings equal weakness is one of the deepest roots of dismissive avoidant attachment because it makes vulnerability feel shameful. It pushes the person toward control, distance, and self-reliance. Understanding this belief with compassion helps you see that it was learned. It was a way to survive in an environment where emotions were not safe. Now you have the chance to update it. You can learn that feelings are not weakness. They are part of your humanity. When you allow your humanity to be present, you do not become less strong. You become more real, and realness is what makes love possible. Longing for love they don't show. This section is about longing for love they don't show, the quiet ache that many dismissive avoidant people carry while appearing fine on the outside. This is one of the most tender truths in avoidant attachment. A dismissive avoidant person can look independent, calm, and even emotionally uninterested, yet inside they may long for warmth, understanding, and a feeling of being chosen. They may want love that feels safe, steady, and respectful. They may even picture what it would be like to relax into closeness. The tragedy is that the very strategies that help them survive can also keep that love at a distance. Longing for love often begins in childhood, not because the child did not have any love, but because the love that was available did not always meet the child emotionally. A child might have had caregivers who provided, who showed up, and who cared in their own way. Still, the child might not have been comforted when they were sad, reassured when they were scared, or met with tenderness when they were vulnerable. The child learns to want love and also to stop reaching for it. The longing stays, the reaching fades. As the child grows, longing becomes something private. The child learns not to talk about it because talking about it feels like need, and need feels shameful or unsafe. The child learns to be the one who does not need much. They become proud of being self-sufficient. They may even believe their longing is childish and should be outgrown. They may tell themselves they are fine. Still, the longing can show up in quiet moments, such as feeling a pang when they see other people being comforted, or feeling a sudden ache when they are alone at night. These moments reveal that the heart never stopped wanting connection. One common situation looks like this. A dismissive avoidant adult comes home after a hard day. They want comfort, but they do not know how to ask. Their partner might sense something and offer closeness. The avoidant person might brush it off and say they are fine. The partner backs away, wanting to respect space. The avoidant person then feels alone and may feel a quiet disappointment, even though they were the one who rejected comfort. The longing is present, but the defense blocks the expression of it. The person longs for love and also protects themselves from receiving it. Longing can also show up as a desire to be understood without having to explain. Many dismissive avoidants struggle with emotional language. They may not know how to describe what they feel. They may feel embarrassed trying, so they long for someone who can simply sense them. They want a partner who will know when they need space and when they need closeness. This longing is understandable. It is the longing to be met easily without the risk of awkward vulnerability. The difficulty is that adult relationships usually require communication. When the avoidant person does not communicate, they may feel unseen. Their partner may feel confused. Both people can feel lonely even while loving each other. Another way longing shows up is in the early intensity of a relationship. Many dismissive avoidants can be very present in the beginning, when closeness feels exciting and safe. They may feel hopeful. They may feel the possibility of being loved without pressure. They may show affection and attention. This early phase can satisfy the longing. As the relationship deepens and expectations rise, the avoidant person may feel pressure and the defenses return. The longing remains, but the person becomes more guarded. The partner experiences a shift from warmth to distance and feels hurt. The avoidant person experiences the shift as self-protection. Both lose the easy closeness that once felt possible. One common situation looks like this. The partner begins to ask for more emotional reassurance, and the avoidant person begins to withdraw. The partner feels rejected and pursues. The avoidant person feels crowded and withdraws more. Underneath, the avoidant person might still long for love, but they long for love that does not feel like a demand. They want closeness that feels like a choice, not an obligation. When closeness feels demanded, their defenses rise. The longing gets buried again. Longing for love can also show up in the avoidant person's private fantasies. They may imagine a relationship that feels peaceful, where they are accepted and not pressured. They may imagine being understood without having to talk too much. They may imagine being able to be themselves without criticism. These fantasies can be soothing because they allow longing without risk. In real life, love requires interaction, misunderstanding, repair, and communication. Those realities can trigger fear. The avoidant person may then compare real relationships to the fantasy and feel dissatisfied. They may not realize that what they are longing for is safety, not perfection. Another painful aspect of longing is that it can be delayed. Many dismissive avoidants experience longing more strongly after distance has been created. After a breakup, after a partner stops pursuing, or after time alone, the longing can rise. The avoidant person may miss the partner more than they expected. They may feel sadness that surprises them. They may want closeness again. The partner may already be gone or emotionally guarded. This timing difference can create regret. The avoidant person may wonder why they did not appreciate the relationship when it was there. The answer is often that closeness triggered fear, and distance quieted fear enough for longing to be felt. One common situation looks like this after a breakup. The dismissive avoidant person feels relief at first. The relief comes from reduced pressure. Weeks later, when life is quieter, the person feels an ache. They miss the warmth and companionship. They might want to reach out. They might also feel embarrassed for missing. They might tell themselves they are fine. The longing remains unresolved because the person does not know how to honor it without feeling exposed. The cycle repeats, sometimes with the same partner, sometimes with new ones. Longing for love they don't show can also appear as overfocus on independence. Some dismissive avoidants fill their life with work, goals, and personal projects. They may be highly successful. They may enjoy their freedom. Still, beneath the busy schedule, there can be a quiet desire to be held emotionally. The longing may not feel like a clear desire for romance. It may feel like a vague emptiness. It may feel like something is missing. Because the person does not want to admit need, they may not interpret it as longing. They may interpret it as boredom, restlessness, or dissatisfaction with life. Healing involves giving the longing permission to exist. For many dismissive avoidants, the first step is simply admitting to themselves that they want love. This can feel surprisingly difficult because they have built an identity around not needing. Admitting longing can feel like weakness. In reality, longing is part of being human. When you allow longing to exist without shame, you become more honest with yourself. That honesty makes it easier to choose behaviors that move you toward connection rather than away from it. It also involves learning to show love in small ways that feel safe. Showing love does not have to mean dramatic emotional confession. It can begin with simple statements, such as, "I care about you," or "I like being with you," or "I miss you," even if saying it feels awkward. It can also mean staying present when your partner is emotional, even if you do not know what to say. These are acts of courage for an avoidant person. They allow the longing to become part of the relationship rather than something hidden. One common situation looks like this in growth. A dismissive avoidant person notices they feel a desire to reach out, and instead of suppressing it, they send a simple message. The message is not perfect. It is honest. The partner responds warmly. The avoidant person feels both relief and discomfort. This is how healing works. It is not all comfort. It is comfort mixed with fear, and fear gradually softens through repeated safe experiences. Longing for love they don't show is not a sign of manipulation. It is a sign of a guarded heart. The heart learned to protect itself by hiding need, hiding tenderness, and hiding the desire for closeness. The longing never left. It simply became quiet. When you begin to honor that longing and express it in manageable ways, you begin to build a life where love is not only desired in secret but also experienced in reality. You do not have to give up your independence to do this. You simply have to allow love to be visible, little by little, so it can become something you live, not only something you privately want. The loneliness behind the armor. This section is about the loneliness behind the armor, the quiet solitude that can exist inside a dismissive avoidant person even when they appear confident and self-sufficient. Many dismissive avoidant adults are admired. They can seem composed, capable, and emotionally untouchable. People may assume that if someone can stand on their own feet, they must not feel lonely. Loneliness, though, is not only about being alone physically, it is about being alone emotionally. It is the feeling that nobody truly sees you and that you cannot fully let anyone see you. Armor can protect you from being hurt, and armor can also keep you from being held. The armor of dismissive avoidance is built from habits that once made sense. You learn to keep your feelings private. You learn to handle problems alone. You learn not to ask for comfort. You learn to appear fine. This armor is not a sign of coldness. It is a sign of adaptation. The child who learned to be self-reliant often did so because emotional support was limited or unsafe. As an adult, the armor can feel like a core part of identity. It can feel like strength. The loneliness behind it can be hard to notice because it has been there so long. Loneliness behind the armor often shows up as a sense of disconnection rather than a clear ache. A dismissive, avoidant person may not sit around thinking, "I am lonely." They may simply feel restless, bored, or irritable. They may feel a desire to be busy. They may feel uncomfortable when life gets quiet. Quiet can make the loneliness louder. So they fill the quiet. They work, they exercise, they scroll, they distract. Their life stays full, but the feeling of being emotionally held stays absent. One common situation looks like this. A dismissive, avoidant person has a full day, a successful career, and many responsibilities. They are respected. They are relied on. At night, when the day is done, they feel a vague emptiness. They might not know what it is. They might tell themselves they need a vacation. They might tell themselves they need a new goal. The deeper truth might be that they are longing for emotional closeness, for the relief of being known. The armor keeps that longing hidden, and the loneliness stays unresolved. The loneliness behind the armor is often tied to the belief that needing is unsafe. If you believe needing is weakness, you will not let yourself need. If you do not let yourself need, you will not let yourself be comforted. Comfort is what reduces loneliness. It is not only company, it is the experience of being met in your inner world. When you block comfort, you block one of the most natural remedies for loneliness. You might not realize you are doing this because the armor feels normal. You might even believe you are fine without comfort. Still, the loneliness often remains. Loneliness also grows when relationships stay on the surface. Many dismissive avoidants are good at social connection. They can be charming, they can be funny, they can keep conversations light, they can be enjoyable to be around. The trouble is that surface connection does not always feed the deeper hunger for being known. You can be liked by many people and still feel alone. You can have friends and still feel that nobody truly understands you. You might even prefer it that way because being understood feels risky. Still, the cost is that you do not receive the warmth that comes from deep connection. One common situation looks like this in romance. The dismissive avoidant person is in a relationship, and the partner wants deeper closeness. The avoidant person feels pressure and withdraws. The partner feels hurt and either pursues or gives up. If the partner gives up, the relationship becomes calmer and more distant. The avoidant person feels relief. Later they may feel lonely. They may not connect the loneliness to the distance because the distance feels safer. The loneliness behind the armor is the part of them that still wants intimacy, even when defense is winning. Loneliness behind the armor can also be the loneliness of carrying everything alone. Dismissive avoidants often take pride in being capable. They may be the one who handles crises, who plans, who provides, who solves. People rely on them. They may rarely ask for help. Over time, they can feel like the support beam of many relationships. Support beams hold things up, but they are not always supported. This can create a deep sense of solitude. The person may feel that nobody takes care of them the way they take care of others. They may not realize that they rarely allow others to. This is where the loneliness can become painful, because it can turn into resentment. The dismissive, avoidant person might start feeling that relationships are unfair. They might feel that others are needy and demanding. They might feel that nobody appreciates them. Some of this may be true. Some of it may also come from the fact that the avoidant person has not shown their needs. They have not let themselves be seen. The loneliness behind the armor can then turn into bitterness, which becomes another layer of armor. One common situation looks like this. The avoidant person feels stressed and overwhelmed but says nothing. Their partner does not respond because they do not know. Later, the avoidant person feels annoyed that the partner is not supportive. They might think, "Nobody is there for me." The thought is painful. The avoidant person might then withdraw further. Underneath, the person wanted support but did not know how to ask for it without feeling weak. The armor prevented the request, and the loneliness deepened. The loneliness behind the armor is also connected to grief for what was not received. Many dismissive avoidants carry a quiet grief for the comfort they did not have as children. They may not consciously think about it. They may even defend their family. Still, the body remembers what it felt like to be alone with feelings. In adulthood, this can show up as a hunger for warmth that feels hard to admit. The avoidant person might feel ashamed of wanting tenderness. They might dismiss their own longing. The loneliness behind the armor is partly the loneliness of that ungrieved past. Healing loneliness behind the armor involves learning to allow safe closeness. This does not mean dropping all defenses at once. It means practicing small moments of being seen. It means letting someone know you had a hard day. It means receiving a kind gesture without deflecting. It means allowing yourself to be comforted for a moment and noticing that you survive it. These are small steps. They can feel uncomfortable. They can also be deeply relieving because they address loneliness at its root. One common situation looks like this in growth. A dismissive, avoidant person feels tired, and instead of pretending they are fine, they say, "I am having a hard time." The partner responds with warmth. The avoidant person feels both discomfort and relief. The relief is the loneliness lifting a little. The discomfort is the armor reacting. Over time, repeated moments like this teach the body that closeness can be safe. As closeness becomes safer, loneliness becomes less intense. It also helps to recognize that loneliness is not an accusation. Feeling lonely does not mean your partner is failing. It also does not mean you are broken. Loneliness is a signal that something human is needed. The dismissive avoidant person often learns to ignore signals, but signals do not go away. They show up in the body and in mood. When you treat loneliness as information rather than as shame, you can respond to it with kindness. You can choose to reach out in small ways. You can choose to let someone closer. The loneliness behind the armor is the part of you that still wants love in its deepest form. It is the part of you that wants to be known and cared for, not only admired. The armor protected you when closeness did not feel safe. It helped you survive. The cost is that it can keep you emotionally alone. This book is here to help you soften armor without losing dignity, to build closeness without feeling trapped, and to find a way to be strong and still be held. When you do that, loneliness begins to lift, not because you become dependent, but because you become connected in a way that feels real and safe. This section is about the self-image many dismissive, avoidant people live with, confident outside and uncertain inside. This is not true for every avoidant person, but it is common enough that many readers recognize themselves immediately. On the outside, a dismissive, avoidant person may seem composed, independent, and sure of themselves. They may be admired for their strength. They may even believe that strength is the core of who they are. On the inside, though, there can be doubt, sensitivity to criticism, and a quiet fear of being exposed as not enough. The gap between outer confidence and inner uncertainty can shape relationships in powerful ways, because it encourages a person to protect their image instead of revealing their heart. Outer confidence is often built through competence. Many dismissive avoidants learned early that doing well brings approval. They became good at managing responsibilities. They became good at solving problems. They became good at looking put together. Over time, competence became their safest identity. When you are competent, you are less likely to be criticized. When you are competent, you are less likely to feel dependent. When you are competent, you can keep control. All of this can create a confident presence. People see you and believe you have it handled. Inner uncertainty often comes from a different set of childhood lessons. A child can become competent and still feel emotionally unsure. If the child's feelings were dismissed, the child may have learned that their inner world is not welcome. If the child was criticized, the child may have learned that love is conditional. If the child was praised mainly for performance, the child may have learned that being valued depends on being impressive. These lessons create an inner sense that you must keep earning your worth. Even when you succeed, you might not feel secure. You might feel that you could be found lacking at any moment. One common situation looks like this. The dismissive, avoidant adult receives praise at work and appears pleased, but inside they feel tense. They might worry they will not be able to keep up the performance. They might feel that the praise creates expectation. They might feel that being seen makes them vulnerable to later disappointment. This inner uncertainty can lead to a strange relationship with success. Success feels good and also dangerous. The person may then keep pushing, not only to achieve but to maintain their image. The confidence is real, and it is also fragile. This gap between outer confidence and inner uncertainty often shows up in romantic relationships. Early in a relationship, the avoidant person can seem very confident. They can flirt. They can be charming. They can be decisive. The partner may feel drawn to their steadiness. As the relationship deepens, the partner begins to see that the avoidant person struggles with vulnerability. The avoidant person may become defensive when emotions are discussed. They may withdraw when they feel criticized. The partner may be confused, because the confident person now seems fragile. In reality, the inner uncertainty was always there. It was simply protected by distance and competence. Inner uncertainty can make emotional intimacy feel like a threat to self-image. When you open up, you reveal the parts of you that feel less controlled. You reveal need, fear, and longing. If you have built your identity around being strong, these revelations can feel humiliating. You may fear that your partner will lose respect for you. You may fear that your partner will see you as weak. You may even fear that your partner will use your vulnerability against you. These fears can lead you to keep your partner at a distance, even when you love them. One common situation looks like this during conflict. A partner says something that sounds like criticism, even if it is spoken gently. The avoidant person feels a flash of inner insecurity. They may feel shame. They may feel small. Rather than showing that, they may become defensive or cold. They may argue about facts. They may shut down. The partner experiences this as dismissive or uncaring. Underneath, the avoidant person is protecting their self-image. They cannot tolerate feeling inadequate, so they push the feeling away through distance. Outer confidence can also confuse partners because it suggests emotional resilience that may not be present. A partner may think they can handle anything, so they can handle this conversation. The avoidant person might be able to handle practical problems and still struggle deeply with emotional ones. Emotional skill is not the same as practical skill. If you were never taught to talk about feelings, you may feel uncertain even while being highly capable. The partner may interpret your uncertainty as unwillingness. You may feel misunderstood and judged. The gap grows. Inner uncertainty can also lead to a fear of dependency. If you are not fully confident inside, relying on someone else can feel terrifying. You may worry that if you need them, they will leave. You may worry that if you attach, you will be hurt. You may then decide to rely on yourself, because relying on yourself feels safer. The irony is that relying on yourself can keep the inner uncertainty alive, because you never get to experience being accepted in your vulnerability. You keep proving you can stand alone, but you never prove to yourself that you can be loved while needing. One common situation looks like this. The avoidant person wants reassurance but cannot ask for it. They may act indifferent. They may withdraw. They may test the partner by being distant. The partner may feel hurt and step back. The avoidant person then feels rejected and becomes even more guarded. The inner uncertainty is driving the behavior, but it is hidden behind the outer confidence. The avoidant person may even believe they are above needing reassurance while quietly craving it. The confident outside can also create a sense of emotional isolation. People may not offer support because they assume you do not need it. Friends may come to you for advice and never ask how you are. Partners may assume you want space because you seem self-sufficient. You may also push people away when they get close, which confirms their assumption. You become alone with your inner uncertainty because your outer self communicates that you are fine. This can be a painful experience because you may feel unseen while also maintaining the image that keeps you safe. Healing involves integrating the outer and inner self. This does not mean becoming emotionally dramatic. It means allowing yourself to be a whole person. You can be capable and still have feelings. You can be strong and still need comfort. You can be confident in some areas and uncertain in others. When you allow this complexity, your self-image becomes less brittle. You no longer need to defend your confidence so fiercely because you are not pretending you are invulnerable. One common situation looks like this in growth. The avoidant person admits to a partner, "I look confident, but I get insecure about being enough for you." This is vulnerability. It can feel terrifying to say. It can also be deeply connecting. The partner often feels relieved because the avoidant person becomes more human and more reachable. The avoidant person often feels a strange relief too because they no longer have to perform invulnerability. They can be loved as they are. Another part of healing is learning to tolerate gentle dependence. Dependence in healthy relationships is not loss of self. It is a mutual exchange of support. When you allow yourself to lean a little, you discover that you can be cared for without being controlled. You discover that you can be vulnerable without being humiliated. Each experience of safe vulnerability reduces inner uncertainty. Over time, confidence becomes more real because it is not only an image. It is grounded in the knowledge that you can be seen and still be safe. The self-image of confident outside and uncertain inside is often the result of a life spent proving worth through competence while carrying unmet emotional needs. It can create dismissive avoidance because the person protects their image through distance and control. Understanding this self-image can bring compassion to your patterns. It can also show you the path forward, which is not to abandon confidence, but to deepen it. When confidence includes the courage to be vulnerable, it becomes steadier. When you can be strong and still be seen, relationships become less threatening and more nourishing. The goal is not to become someone else. The goal is to become more fully yourself, with room for both your competence and your heart. The cost of keeping walls so high. This section is about the cost of keeping walls so high, the quiet losses that come with living in constant emotional protection. Many dismissive, avoidant people built their walls for good reasons. The walls kept them safe when closeness felt unreliable or shaming. The walls helped them function. The walls protected dignity. Over time, though, walls do not only keep pain out, they also keep love out. They keep comfort out. They keep deep connection out. The cost is not always obvious at first, because a walled life can still look successful. The cost often appears in subtle ways, like loneliness that cannot be named, relationships that never quite deepen, and a sense that something is missing even when everything seems fine. The first cost is that you do not get to be fully known. Being known is not about people knowing your hobbies or your job. It is about someone understanding your inner world, your fears, your tenderness, your hopes, and the parts of you that feel most human. When walls are high, you may share facts and stories while keeping your deeper emotional truth private. People may like you, they may admire you, they may respect you. Still, you may feel that they do not truly know you. This can create a quiet loneliness that follows you even in company. Being unknown can feel safer than being judged, but it also creates isolation. Many dismissive avoidants learn to accept this isolation because it feels normal. They may tell themselves they do not need deep emotional closeness. They may focus on independence. Still, the human heart tends to want to be seen. When that desire is repeatedly denied, the person may become numb or restless. They may chase stimulation through work, goals, or distraction. The walls keep them from the simple relief of being emotionally held. The second cost is that you do not get to receive comfort when you need it. Comfort is one of the most healing experiences in human life. It is the experience of being met when you are hurting. It is being listened to without judgment. It is being held emotionally and sometimes physically. When your walls are high, you may refuse comfort even when it is offered. You may say you are fine. You may change the subject. You may isolate when you are stressed. This can make you look strong. It can also make life feel heavier than it needs to be. You carry everything alone because the walls do not allow anyone to share the weight with you. One common situation looks like this. A dismissive avoidant person is overwhelmed by work or personal stress. Their partner notices and offers care. The avoidant person says they are fine and goes quiet. The partner steps back, not wanting to intrude. The avoidant person then feels alone. They might not admit it, but the loneliness grows. The walls protected them from vulnerability and also blocked the comfort that would have helped them. The third cost is that relationships cannot deepen without vulnerability. Relationships deepen through shared truth, shared repair, and shared emotional moments. When your walls are high, you may keep relationships in a safe zone where nothing too emotional is discussed. This can create relationships that are pleasant but shallow. The other person may feel that something is missing. They may want more. You may feel pressured by their desire for closeness. If they pursue, you may withdraw. If they give up, the relationship becomes distant. Either way, the wall remains, and depth is limited. This can be especially painful in romantic relationships because romance invites interdependence. Partners want to feel chosen. They want to feel emotionally connected. They want to feel that they can lean on each other. When walls are high, the partner may feel shut out. They may feel lonely. They may begin to question their worth. The avoidant person may feel guilty and resentful at the same time. They may care deeply and still not know how to lower the wall without feeling unsafe. Over time, the relationship can become a place of tension rather than comfort. The fourth cost is misunderstanding. When you keep walls high, other people have to guess what you feel. They may interpret your silence as indifference. They may interpret your need for space as rejection. They may interpret your calm as not caring. They may become anxious or angry because they do not know where they stand. You may feel misunderstood because you do care. You may believe that your loyalty and presence should be enough. The problem is that walls block the signals that help people feel safe. When people do not feel safe, they react, and their reactions can create the very conflict you were trying to avoid. One common situation looks like this. A partner says they feel lonely and asks for more closeness. The avoidant person feels criticized and withdraws. The partner feels more lonely and becomes more emotional. The avoidant person feels overwhelmed and withdraws further. The cycle intensifies. The wall was meant to protect peace. Instead, it creates instability because the partner cannot feel secure. The avoidant person becomes even more convinced that emotions are dangerous, which reinforces the wall. The fifth cost is internal tension. Keeping walls high requires constant self-management. You have to monitor what you share. You have to regulate your emotions quickly. You have to maintain composure. You have to avoid situations that might expose you. This can be tiring. It can create a life where you are always slightly braced, even if you do not notice the bracing. Over time, that tension can show up as exhaustion, irritability, or a sense of emptiness. You might not connect it to your emotional defenses because those defenses feel like you. Still, a guarded life can be a strained life. Walls can also cost you self-understanding. When you keep feelings out of awareness, you lose access to your own needs. You may not know what you want. You may not know what hurts you. You may not know when you are lonely until the loneliness becomes intense. You may make decisions based on logic alone and later feel dissatisfied. Feelings carry information. If walls block feelings, you lose information. You might become skilled at functioning while feeling disconnected from the deeper parts of yourself. Another cost is delayed grief. Dismissive avoidants often push pain down and keep going. This can create the appearance of resilience. Still, grief has its own timing. What is pushed down often rises later. It might rise as sadness months after a breakup. It might rise as sudden emptiness after a period of busyness. It might rise as irritability with loved ones. When walls are high, grief does not have a safe place to be expressed, so it comes out sideways. This can confuse you and those around you. It can also keep you from healing fully, because healing requires letting emotions move through you rather than staying trapped. The cost of high walls also includes missed joy. When you are defended, you do not only defend against pain. You defend against being touched. Being touched is part of joy. It is part of being moved by love, by beauty, by connection. Many dismissive avoidants have a muted relationship with joy because joy requires openness. Joy often wants to be shared. When you keep your inner world private, you may keep joy private too. Life becomes flatter. You might succeed and still feel that something is missing. The missing thing is often emotional aliveness. Healing the cost does not mean tearing the walls down overnight. Walls were built from experience, so they soften through experience. For dismissive, avoidant people, the most important step is learning that you can lower the wall a little without being harmed. You can share one feeling. You can accept one moment of comfort. You can stay present for one difficult conversation without disappearing. These small moments teach the body that vulnerability can be safe. Over time, the wall becomes less necessary. You still have boundaries, but you do not need a fortress. One common situation looks like this in growth. The avoidant person feels the urge to withdraw and instead says, "I am overwhelmed, and I need some time, but I care and I will come back." This is a small opening in the wall. It preserves autonomy while offering connection. It reduces confusion for the partner. It also reduces guilt for the avoidant person because they are being honest instead of disappearing. Repeated moments like this lower the wall gradually and build trust on both sides. The cost of keeping walls so high is not meant to blame you for being defended. It is meant to honor what you have been trying to protect and what you have been losing in the process. Your Walls helped you survive. They helped you stay dignified. They helped you function. They also kept you from receiving the full nourishment of love. When you begin to soften the walls, you do not lose strength. You gain connection. You gain comfort. You gain the ability to be known and still be safe. That is one of the deepest forms of healing for a dismissive avoidant person, and it is possible through patience, practice, and the steady courage to let love in a little at a time.